I just want to bring more awareness to it. And I know some people will be like, Ture, it's not that deep. It is that deep. It is that deep to me. And I do care about it a lot. And I'm going to talk about it. So that's why I started a podcast.
For
I
a
knew
kid that went through college during COVID, you think I would be a lot more tech savvy than I am.
exactly. Exactly. We're just these two washed up has-beens just struggling. Okay, hold on. Let's see if we can do. So I think maybe we'll just leave it like this. I feel like such a creep, but when I started my TikTok account, I had zero fault. So I have two TikTok accounts. I have a TikTok account where I have like a pretty decent following, but I'm like a weirdo over there. On my goalie one, I'm like slowly trying to build a following, but I started following, I think you were the first or second goalie account that I followed. And I was like, you were working with young kids. You were saying a lot of the things that I say. And I was like, I need to somehow get on this guy's radar so I can just talk with him because, like you said, so much of what you're saying. And where are you located in Utah?
No, I'm actually in Pittsburgh.
So the same conversations that I'm having in Lucan, Ontario, Canada, you are having in Pittsburgh. And that's the whole reason I want to start this project because I want to start this conversation more consistently and have like a place where we can tell parents to go to, and we might not have all the answers, but at least they won't feel like they're going crazy in their little goalie world.
It's funny how repetitive these conversations are. I always get parents or goalies that tell me my kid is just a shooter tutor during practice.
Hmm.
And they just stand there, they get peppered with 2-on-0 warm-ups or 3 shots in 5 seconds, and then their coach gets on them for not practicing good habits when the
Yeah.
environment around them is not supporting them, and the parent or goalie tries to approach the coach, and the coach always has the same response. Well, I never played goalie. I don't know what to say. My goal with Coach Utah as a brand is to try to bridge the gap, not only between goalies and coaches, but coaches and parents as well, and parents and goalies, like a big triangle to help everybody better understand how to support goalie development in their own perspective. I think in scenarios where goalies don't have a specified goalie coach, they can still find ways to develop on their own, but they need to know what to do and how to do that on their own, even if the drills are not really meant for them.
Right. And kind of piggybacking off of that, what I notice is in like the hockey hotbed areas where there's like all these goalie specialized schools, I feel like when you have access to that, the access to the more specified type of goalie coaching kind of increases. And my biggest worry is that parents and goalies think that the only goalie coaching that's good goalie coaching is the one where they're like measuring with a protractor what the angle of their butterfly. Like it doesn't need to be that deep, especially at this level. They just need somebody who is teaching them the basics, teaching them the fundamentals, making sure that their equipment is fitting properly. I have a goalie that last year we made so much progress. This year, she got put in a new set of used equipment, and guess what? They're 3 inches too tall. And now, this goalie that was moving beautifully last year is struggling to even bounce back up to get to a rebound, let alone like steal a game for her team. And it's like even equipment type things. You just need somebody in your circle, somebody, even if it's the association somewhere that can help navigate through these things that somebody who doesn't know goaltending isn't going to know left from right. They just don't know. And how many kids are we losing from the sport because we're not developing them in a way that their counterparts or their other teammates are being developed because that type of coaching is more accessible.
I agree. And I think another issue that I've seen, I've had the chance to talk with a few local coaches in the Pittsburgh area, and I asked them, do you do any goalie specific training or goalie specific drills? And of course, the answer is no. I wouldn't really expect them to say yes. But I asked them, would they ever be comfortable doing that? And they say, well, I don't know the position of goaltending well enough to know how to fit what they need to work on into our practices. And I think coaches have such a, I don't know the right word for it, but they take such a big step back from coaching goalies because they know that position is so complex. And I think a lot of coaches think that when you say to them, you need to address goalie coaching or you need to coach your goalies, they think, okay, I need to teach them mechanics of RVH, a proper butterfly, blocking versus tracking, like all these different, very minute, very fine details. When in reality, it's understanding how to create an environment around the goalies for them to work on something they need to without needing to correct them. It's more so an environmental fix rather than a individual fix of the goalie, if that makes sense.
And you have that particular coaching situation, and then something that I had, like, written down. This is actually a quote from a parent that they were given about the goalie needs to just see puck, save puck. And on the other side, it's like there's the coaches that don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of how precise we can truly get with the position. Then there's the other side where it's like, "Oh, you just get in there and you just stop the puck. You didn't stop the puck." Like, so there's these two very polar opposites, and what do you say to, because we're usually going into a team environment, right? You and I, we're usually going in, and this is not an environment that we have fostered. This, we don't want to step on any toes. We want to be respectful, but we also want to try to do our job, which is to help the environment for the goalie. How do you approach, or do you approach, a coach who just has that philosophy? Goalies just need to stop the puck. Just get in there and stop the puck.
I don't touch that. I am
Mhm.
not a very confrontational person when it comes to that. And even though I know deep down that the coach's intentions are good, they are not focused where they need to be, but me saying that to them will more likely cause issues
Mhm.
than actually solve problems. So instead of trying to force the coach to change their way and their philosophy, who have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years maybe, instead of trying to go in and change that, I talk to the goalies and I'll
Mhm.
say, I've had several instances where I went out to practices and their warm up drill is like 3 players swinging, and I
Yeah.
counted, it was 15 shots in 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and just doing the math, like, you played, I don't know if any of the people watching this played, but if you haven't, think of it this way, you have to drop in a butterfly, make the reactionary save, follow the puck off your body, recover to it, stand up, get in a position for that next save. Those are all ideal habits that you wanna practice. Try doing that all within 2 seconds on repeat for like 30 or 45 seconds straight.
Yeah.
And coaches wonder why bad habits are developing. Like that coach in this scenario would get upset that his goalies are not at the top of their crease or too far deep in their crease or a plethora of other issues. And I try saying to that coach, well, you're not giving them what they need to work on. You're producing bad habits because of the drill you have. And so in that scenario, I know I can't change how the coach approaches that, and that's totally fine. What I do in that scenario, I pull the goalies aside and I say, listen, this drill, in my opinion, it's pretty stupid, but what do I know? I am not the coach. We have to deal with that. What do you have control over this drill? Like, well, I guess seeing the puck, picking it up quick, especially once I make that first save, I'm like, exactly. I don't care how many times you get scored on. If that's your focus and you were doing that every single time, that's how you develop, even on drills like this. I
Mhm.
do my best to point little things out that goalies actually have control over because that is what's going to help them become better. I think there is a really big misconception in goaltending or just the hockey world in general, where, like you said, coaches, parents, players say, okay, see puck, save puck. If it was that easy, anybody could go out there and do it. Like, there is so much that goes into it, but being successful as a goalie isn't just about making the saves. The saves are a byproduct of everything you do leading up to it. The movements, the decisions, everything. You cannot focus on the outcome without addressing the process that comes along with it. So my big philosophy with goaltending is take out the outcome and focus on the process. The more you focus on the process, the outcome, the saves will take care of themselves.
Something that you had said was you're mid practice, you pull your goalies aside, you say you adjust what the expectation is, right? Having the ability to have a person there to make that expectation change is that's all that I'm asking for. I just want a goalie to have access to somebody who has their best interest in mind, and it just sucks that the reality for a lot of kids is that they don't have that. And a perfect example of me kind of doing a similar thing, last night I'm working with my U11 Tier 1 goalie, and over the weekend, she didn't let up any goals. Great, right?
Mhm.
Most coaches are like, "Oh, our goalie is great." Well, when you go back and watch the video, she was dropping her glove almost every single time she was moving. So she made some great saves with her legs, but you actually just did a video on this the other day about kind of like keeping your upper body high and things like
Yeah,
that, keeping up the net. Yesterday, I made sure that the main thing that she was focusing on was I wanted her glove to be up and out, and I want her to have like a nice, big, strong upper body. And I'm not tooting my own horn at all. I'm just saying, just having somebody there that's going to up her game rather than just assuming that everything she did over the weekend was perfect, not getting any feedback. And now we have upped her development. We've started to create a better habit. And then eventually we'll be able to build off of that. And so when some people are like, okay, Trey, like we get it. Goalie coaches are important. That's the level of detail that I would love for all kids to have access to as they're developing their understanding of this position.
and going back, you said it pretty early on where coaches just understand some of the basics, positioning of angle, square, depth, and what that means. Just the basic movements and what to look for on save selections. You don't need to know the mechanics of it all, just a general idea of when to use it, and then be comfortable communicating with your goalies. Ask
Mhm,
them, especially at higher levels where you don't have a goalie coach present, asking, okay, is there something you want to focus on today? Or even, hey, over the weekend, you got scored on 4 times high glove. I don't know how to fix that, but what do you think you can practice to make that happen?
mhm.
And goalie says, okay, I can practice XYZ. Coach thinks, okay, great. I'm going to watch you do XYZ. Halfway through the practice, I'll check in. And if you're doing that, great. If not, let's focus up and figure out how we can do that. It's as simple as that, just being comfortable approaching goalies and being okay not knowing as a coach the entirety of that position. Like, I've been doing this for 3 years full time now, and once I got about a year in, I felt pretty confident about my abilities. Like, I felt like, "Oh, yeah, I know goaltending pretty well. I watch the NHL. I can kinda pinpoint where goalies went wrong and why they get scored on." But as I kept going, I realized the more I know, the less I know.
Mhm.
Like, I am a lot more open to learning and admitting that I don't know everything now because I'm so eager to learn how to improve goalie development for everyone. And that's not just goalies, because goalies learn in a billion different ways, but that includes parents and coaches, like you talked about, and just figuring out how this little topic, this little issue we're addressing can just be a shotgun blast everywhere and stick with every person that is involved with goalie development.
My goalie coach from college came on, and he's a goalie coach in Maine for one of the affiliates for the Boston Bruins. He was a goalie, I don't know, 4 decades ago, and so I had this conversation with him like, how much are you changing your philosophy? The game has changed so much even since we've played, right? Like all the
Mhm.
technology, the way that you wear pads now, so much has changed. And I've asked him, I was like, "So, do the guys listen to you? Like, do they think you're legit?" And the biggest thing that he says to me is, you can go to the umpteenth degree of detail in this position. but it's still always going to come back to the basics. It's going to come back to how good of a skater are you? How good are your angles? How good is your puck track? Like there are these very basic things that no matter who you go to as a goalie coach, I'm sure you might teach something a little different than me. And I tell all the kids that I work with this. You might hear me say something and it might seem like it contradicts what a different goalie coach says, but keep adding things to your toolbox, and then you're the athlete in the situation. The more you practice it, the more you're going to be like, oh, I want to use this from Coach Trey, or oh, I want to use this from Coach Quisgard. I want to use this from Coach Utah. The more you do it, the better. But getting back to Coach Quisgard, he's just like, I I have respect for the basics of the position, and I try to not let myself get too caught up in whatever the new hype is. So there's always new things that come, and this person's doing this and this person's doing that. He's just like, I see the goalie in front of me. I don't try to make them like me. I try to see what they need, help them with it. I think that it's so important to recognize the game is always changing, the position is always changing, but you can still peel it back to these very fundamental pieces. And if we can even get those fundamental pieces out to youth hockey associations, to parents, to help have the conversations off the ice with their kid, all these gaps that we're seeing can start to come together and create really strong goalies everywhere.
Yeah, 100%. One of the biggest detriments to goalie development for kids who enjoy watching the NHL, enjoy watching the PWHL, NCAA D1, men's, women's, whoever it is. One of the biggest detriments is having a mentor tell a goalie to watch somebody else play whose style does not resemble them
Mhm.
whatsoever. And that's one thing that I had to learn pretty quickly. When I started coaching, I knew what worked for me, and I would try to formulate all my goalies' movements to that because I knew that's what worked. But pretty soon, after a couple weeks, I saw that wasn't working and I had to take a step back. I thought, okay, why is this not working? This is work for me, nothing's clicking. And so I had a conversation with one of my goalies early on, and I just asked, this is what I would tell you to do. And it always worked for me, but it doesn't look like it's working for you. Why not? And be honest. And he just told me, like, this just isn't the style I play. That's not a decision I would make. That's not a position I would put myself in. I was like, okay, thank you so much for being honest. Let's readdress this. What decision are you making? How are you going to make that save? And what position are you going to put yourself in? Just opened up a whole new way of how I look at coaching goalies. Instead
Mhm.
of me trying to formulate the perfect goalie in my head and then try to get every goalie to match that, I try to think of every goalie style, how they play, and how I can add to that. Even if it's a style I am not comfortable coaching or that I don't have a lot of experience with.
I think that that just creates a stronger rationale for why it's okay for head coaches to learn a bit about the position because we played the position and we don't even know everything, right?
Mhm.
My goalie coach who's working with guys that go off and play in the NHL, like he doesn't even know everything. We are getting feedback from our goalies. Another thing that my coach had said is if you're a coach and you don't know anything about the position, like you just said, ask the kid, why did you do that? Walk me through your thought process. Why did you make that save? Why did you approach the rebound like that? Just having those conversations can give your goalie ideas of something that they want to do different. It might remind them, oh, I saw this other goalie that's my age do this time. Having a conversation is way better than just letting them go to the end of the ice and wait for something to happen during practice. We have so many coaches that don't realize how left alone their goalies are. Keep in mind, most of the kids I'm working with are like 9, 10, 11. That's a young kid to just be down there just like self-sufficient. So just go have a conversation. Say, hey, what are you going to work on this drill? Hey, I noticed this. I want you to try to do something a little different. Just talk to them. It will help the coach become more comfortable in pushing their boundary of their understanding of the position. But they have to start somewhere. It's not going to start by just kind of not intentionally ignoring them, but that's essentially what's happening.
There's just a stigma around goalies that it's such a different position.
Mhm.
that nobody wants to address it unless you are a clear-cut goalie coach. And I
Yeah.
always tell parents and coaches this analogy. Like, if you watch American football or if you watch baseball or anything like that, the most vital person on the football field is quarterback, right?
Mhm.
If the team did not have a quarterback coach, do you think at least half the coaching staff would learn more about that so their QB could be more proficient in their position?
Mhm.
100%. Same
Mhm.
thing with a pitcher or a catcher in baseball. If there's not a pitching coach to teach mechanics, that's okay. Teach them scenarios to run through. If it's 3-2 count with one runner on, how are you going to pitch versus no outs, bases loaded, stuff like
Mhm.
that. Just running through these different situations so not only the player can learn, but the coach can learn as well. But in
Absolutely.
hockey, it's just not happening. It's so foreign to everybody when it's a very regular position that just has a lot of different complexities. But the position itself, the way I like saying it is goaltending is extremely complex, yet such a simple position if
Mhm.
you make it. And I think the hockey community as a whole, and I am a part of this, can do a better job of not making it seem so complex.
Even getting into, like, the mentor side of the conversation, I think that we also play a role in keeping our goalies that we work with grounded and making sure that they know that they're not alone and that they have somebody there, because you probably would agree that a lot of our position is mental as well, and I feel like that's an area of the position that is even less touched on.
Goalies are weird, right? You have no idea what's going on in their head. The mental load, the mental capacity they have on them is so much greater compared to anybody else on the ice. Like,
Do you ever get
and
worried about saying that out loud? Like, do you ever get, because I do, because I feel the same way. But then I go through this conundrum of I don't wanna pit goalies against other positions, but gosh, like, we really are analyzing things to the umpteenth degree. Is this a right-hand shot? Is this a left-hand shot? Where do I wanna place this rebound? Is this a situation that I should cover the puck? Should I freeze it? Should I give my team a whistle? Or should I keep the play going? Like, there are so many things. I can recognize that it's true that there's also so many things for the other positions on our teams, but sometimes I'm afraid to say out loud, like, do you realize how much goes through a goalie's mind, like you said, in 30 seconds, in a minute, game after game after game, and then hopefully practice after practice after practice.
I understand where you're coming from, and that is a not necessarily a fear I have, but again, I don't want to step on toes when I
Right.
say that because I understand that wingers, centers, defensemen, they are all making constant decisions as well. And they have their own mental load. They have their own things that they're working on, and they can make just as many mistakes, if not more, than goalies. I think the thing that sets goalies apart in that aspect a little bit more is the mistakes they make are amplified so much more compared to everybody else on the team.
Mhm.
And if you make a mistake as a defenseman, as a forward, anybody out there on the ice, the average hockey watcher, coaches, players might probably recognize, yeah, that was a mistake, but the play's still going on, get back into it. When a goalie makes a mistake, it's in the back of the net and everybody
Mhm.
sees it. It doesn't matter if it's the best shot in the world or a chip shot in from the far blue line that bounces off your glove and goes in. Yes, that's happened to me. It it doesn't matter what kind of goal that goes in. A goal signifies a mistake from a goalie 9 times out of 10. I'm a firm believer that no matter how ridiculous a goal is, for the most part, a goalie can make adjustments to make the save. I think there are perfect shots. I think there are perfect passes, and I think there are really just well designed plays by the opposing team to get a goal where a goalie, you look at it, you're like, oh, there's no chance, like lack of coverage and stuff like that. But even then, I think there are ways where goalies don't recognize they can put themselves in a better position to make
Mhm.
that save. Not saying that they will, but a better read or better body positioning, better ice awareness will get you in a better spot to make those saves. So I think saying on those backdoor passes or those 2-on-1s that continuously happen, just like, "Oh, my team let up another 2-on-1, like, I can't trust them, so I gotta play, like, super deep, and I'm not playing like I know how to," which very understandable. It's frustrating trying to adjust on the fly based on what's going on in front of you. But now you're mentally checked out because you are so worried about what your defense is doing that you're not worried about what you should be doing. And
Mhm.
that's where things go off the rails. I think one thing a lot of people forget about goalies is they work in a team system. Forwards and defensemen, when they make mistakes, they rely on their goalie every time to help them with that mistake. Goalies do the same thing to their forwards and defensemen as well. If they make a save but get a bad push or a bad rotation to a rebound and get caught out of position, goalies trust their forward and D to go make a play or at least give them time to get in position to make that save. Going back to the original question, I think there is a mental load that a lot of forwards and defensemen carry, especially if they are going through a tough patch. But I think the biggest thing that sets goalies apart in terms of mental load is their performance is always based on outcome, no
Mhm.
matter how you look at it. Coaches will always see a team that loses 7, 8-4, and we'll think, oh, well, team's not that good, but the goaltending's probably not that good. Versus
Mhm.
they see a team that wins 7-0, 4-1 every time and probably thinks, oh, they have a good goalie, which they probably do, but they don't take the time to look to see what the goalie is proficient in, what they are struggling with. And because of that, there's just no proper way to address development in that
Mhm.
aspect.
Yeah.
And because of that, goalies get so caught up on the outcome, their save percentage, their goals against, and stuff like that. They don't recognize the little improvements they make. So if they're not
Mhm.
pitching a shutout or a one goal against game every game, they feel like they are just really struggling and it is evident around them.
Speaking of save percentage, what do you say to a 12-year-old whose number one goal, you ask them to give you their goals, their number one goal at the age of 12 is to have a save percentage of over 900?
I think that is an awesome goal to strive for, but I would tell them to break it down more. I think that's a great thing to work towards, but that's not something you directly have control over. I'll be like, "What do you mean? I gotta go in and make saves." Well, yeah. How do you make the saves?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta be in position. Exactly. What else you have to do? I gotta skate. Yep. What else you have to do? I gotta read the shot. Exactly. Those are three things, three different things that you actually have control over. What right now is stopping you from making more saves than you want to?
Mhm.
Uh, I I don't know, maybe like rebounds. I can't get to rebounds. Great. That's what you need to work on.
Yeah.
Work on getting better at making a save and getting to rebounds. By doing that, you make more saves, save percentage goes up.
It's just a lot of pressure to put on yourself to be doing math in your head when you're mid-game of how many shots you wanna get more in the game to get your save percentage for that game over 900, right? And so that was exactly what I said. This can be something that will happen naturally as we start taking care of those smaller pieces of our game. I wanna try and just see what other, um I feel like in a roundabout way, we've touched on most of these things.
I think so too. This conversation has been amazing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like so many of us goalie coaches exist in silos, right? And I just feel like if you search goalie coaches on TikTok, on Instagram, like there's so many cool coaches. And I'm like, how can we I don't know, like these conversations we could just have forever. And I won't because I'm an adult now and I know that that's not appropriate, but it's like there's so much to talk about, and I think that there's some great higher level podcasts, there's some great higher level conversations of, like, things, like, related to the NHL and related to, like, getting into the NCAA and what that path looks like, but I don't think it's happening, at least that I've seen, in this lower age development, like, younger kiddo situation. And clearly, we can have conversations about it. There's conversations to be had. It's just like somebody has to start the conversation.
Yeah, and I think one of the next big steps that I wanna look into, and you do what you want, obviously, this is your project. I think it would
Mhm.
be a good idea to reach out to some coaches, like just some head coaches
I
or
know,
assistant
and
coaches,
just try,
that
like
don't have that background, and just be open to have a conversation similar to this where we say these are the problems we hear, and then they voice their opinion and their frustrations, and then
yeah,
figure out a middle ground to meet on there. A cool story that I like sharing with some of my coaches is looking back on my career outside of goalie coaches specifically. I didn't have one coach that really took time out of practice to pull me aside and say, is there something you want to work on? Until I got to college. My junior year of college, we got a new coach, and he really opened my eyes to what goalie development could be, especially without a goalie coach. When I was at the University of Utah, we didn't have a full-time goalie coach. We had a gentleman that would come in and help once a month, give or take. There were 4 of us goalies on the ice, so we got 2, maybe 3 minutes of FaceTime with this coach throughout the practice, and it was valuable, but it was still frustrating. We got that 2 times a month. When I didn't have that advice, I didn't really think that I had control over my own development because I didn't know what I was or wasn't doing correctly.
mhm.
And once this coach came in, a couple weeks in, he would pull me aside and he's like, "Hey, so this is what I'm thinking of doing for warm-ups, but is that something you want to do?" I'm like, "Me? Like, are you talking to me?" He's like, "Yeah, like, is this a good warm-up drill for you? Will that get you warmed up to seeing shots?" Like, yeah, that would be awesome. And he made it a habit where every week, at least 2, 3 times a week, he would explain the warm up drill and say, "Is this what you want, or do you want to make any changes?" And I said, "Could we just move shots instead of outside top of the circle? Can we have a cut across the middle for a shot?" He's like, "Yeah, done." And even on drills where we did the, like, nets back to back in the neutral
Mhm.
zone or, battles down the corner where the nets are turned against the boards, he would pull the goalies aside, and he would say, "Hey, this is not a drill I expect you to do well on. This is purely for goal scoring. Do not get frustrated. I will not evaluate you based on this."
I love
And
that.
I'm just thinking, like, hallelujah, where has this been my entire career? Like, he's not trying to overstep. He's not trying to change how I play or anything. He's just taking time to make me have a voice. And I appreciated that so much. And just in that 2 years, because of those little conversations where I did some personal reflection based on what he asked me, I was able to learn and nitpick some of the parts of my game that I never was thinking about before.
Right.
And to this day, I am so grateful that I had the luxury of being on his team, and he's still
Mhm.
the coach there, and I know he's doing the same thing with the goalies there, and I'm
Yeah.
very, very excited for them and very proud that he is doing that.
That's so awesome, and it's not you don't need to be a goalie expert to do that. Coaches need to hear stories like that to see how simple it is to truly make the goalie feel included in the organization of practice and in the organization of just the again, not to keep using this word, but environment. And imagine how and some younger kids might not really notice that much, but there are like goalies run the spectrum, right? Some are, like, very sensitive, some are very just, like, in their own world, but some of those more sensitive kiddos might be more in tune to the fact that, like, "Oh, I'm not really being talk to down here. They're just coming and shooting on me and stuff. Like, think about how that would make such a big difference for a younger kid. I think that that story is so important to keep sharing. And like you said, let's get some head coaches on here. Let's just lay it all out on the table. How can we make this more beneficial for everyone? And yeah, I think you're on the right track that like that's the next step to this. I can keep having goalie coaches come on here and saying the same exact thing, but it's like, how can we let's get one coach, bring them on and say, "All right, tell me what your practice plan is." Okay, let's show you where there's opportunity to make some goalie specific adjustments that will make a world of difference. And then that can be like the little ripple that's spread throughout hockey world. Because hockey
Yeah,
world is smaller than we think.
it is very small. I am
Hmm.
always surprised at how small it is.
Yeah. I think that that's like, you're onto something. I'll give you credit.
I appreciate that. And I mean, I think just having these conversations is so important for coaches, goalies, parents,
Yeah.
just figuring out that like we see this issue in organizations with goalies, with coaches, all this stuff. But there is a lot more to it than we make it out to be. Like we pick it apart and we just show it kind of as it is, but we don't think about factors that are there because we are not in those positions. So I think it's
Hmm.
important to highlight that this issue is there, but then get varying perspectives, like you said. I think what you're doing is exactly what the goalie world needs. And I
Yeah.
think the more you do it, the more people will listen.
Yeah.
And by consequence, the more opinions you'll get, whether it's in support of the issue or why the issue is having problems in itself in other ways.
Well, and one of the biggest issues that we're going to keep hearing is cost, right? And this is
Mhm.
something that tears at my conscience left and right because it's like, I want to be able to give myself to everyone, right? I want to be able to share my knowledge, but like where it gets into the business side of things, right? And that's where it gets tricky is we want to be able to help, but our time is valuable. And where is that line of wanting to give back to the sport and then also like just to say it out loud, like be compensated. You know what I'm saying? Like and I'm sure as somebody doing this full time, you feel this even more because this is your business. It's super challenging when you want to be that person, but then you know that it comes at a cost to the family. But like that's life. I don't know, it's tricky.
It's a tough line to walk, and I don't know if there's a right way to walk it
Mhm.
because, like you said, I'm sure your perspective is pretty similar to mine, but this sport gave me so much in my life, and I am forever grateful for it that I am still continuing to do it, and not only is it helping me along my journey, but now I have the chance to do that with so many others. And the
Mhm.
least I can do is take my time and give it back to the sport and give it back to the people, the families, the teams that need it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my wife and I are living out here and she's going to nursing school.
Mhm.
So proud of her. She is absolutely killing it. But
Mhm.
that is something that's taken up a lot of our time and resources. We're unsure of what our future careers hold, whether that's staying here, whether that's moving and looking at something else, whether that means trying to focus and grow my personal brand more. And like with that, we need to be able to support our lives outside of hockey. Like
Mhm.
my wife and my family, they are everything. And can't sacrifice I can't sacrifice my family and my relationship not going well because I'm giving so much time
I know.
to the sport. It's hard finding that balance.
It is. And we would need way more time to figure out that balance, but like it just even though hockey world is so small, the number of athletes is so large and That's why the more ripples we can create with these conversations, the more widespread it can be, and hopefully more hubs of these conversations will happen throughout hockey world, and then, we're at least able to help spread our thoughts that way.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we're all working towards, whether
yeah,
it's through the Goalie Growth Project, whether it's through my vision to coach Utah. I think we're all
yeah,
working towards the same thing.
yeah, I think so too. Well, thank you so much. I know that you have like a day full of lessons ahead, but I genuinely appreciate that you I know I was like bugging you on socials for a while. So thank you so much for hearing me out and taking the time and seeing the value and what I'm trying to do because I think that this conversation is just gonna this will be the trajectory that I'm wanting to keep on. So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you for taking the time and being willing to reach out to me. I never
Yeah,
really thought once I got into coaching that I would be where I am right now, just trying to grow social media and my brand as well. So the
for
fact that
sure.
you reached out and wanted me on just kind of was a little bit of a shell shock. I
Yeah.
was like,
I'm
"Whoa,
like,
somebody
"Hey,
wants me on a
hey, it's
podcast.
me
That's
again."
crazy." Yeah. So again, I can't thank you enough for giving me that opportunity to talk about this because
Yeah,
it's a big issue that everybody wants to solve. And I think just handing out little bits and pieces of information and answers like you are, I think that's exactly what you should be doing. So I appreciate you letting me
absolutely.
tag along on your journey.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, your stuff is so good, and I'll make sure that all of Landon's Coach Utah socials are in the show notes, so people will be able to find you there.